Hey, baby. Welcome back to the Bible Baby podcast. Today, I'm going to be sharing how I prepared for an unmedicated birth so that if you are preparing for an unmedicated birth, hopefully what I did can be helpful to you. And also, if I ever am lucky to be pregnant again, I can look back at this to see what I did and hopefully do some of the same things. And I actually had an unmedicated birth with my first daughter, Alethea, and then I had a home birth with my son, Jonas. So Jonas is about 2 months now, and Alethea is 2.5 years old. So this is how I prepared to have two unmedicated births, one in a hospital, one at home. And again, hopefully it can be encouraging and helpful to you as well. So, first of all, there's three domains that I prepared for an unmedicated birth. I prepared physically, mentally, and spiritually. And so I'm going to talk about the physical ways I prepared for birth first, starting with nutrition. So, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, this both times was my get it together. I am preparing for a marathon. I really view birth as this marathon training process. So, it's not something that you should just go into having no prep work and expecting things to go well. You should definitely prep. You have 9 months to prepare. So use that 9 months well and wisely so that obviously birth is going to go how it goes, but you want to best prepare your body and have an idea or just do everything you can to best prepare your body. So, starting with nutrition, I immediately started tracking how much protein I was intaking. I was intaking 100 grams of protein a day, which seems like a lot, but I'm going to go through a typical breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks and see just for ideas of how you can incorporate all of that protein into your daily diet. My diet was essentially whole foods, and I tried to eliminate processed foods as much as I could. Eliminated sugar, which sounds crazy, but no added sugar. So I would eat fruits and I would have honey, but I wouldn't eat anything that had cane sugar in it or right just added sugar. So that was probably the hardest, most disciplined dieting I would say I did was cutting out sugar. But first of all, you just feel better physically and you feel so much better mentally when you cut it out. And if I'm being honest, I think with him, I only cut it out for the last, it was my New Year's resolution. So January, February, March, April. So the last 4 months, I really cut out sugar. So especially any of those, like if you go to Walmart or Pick and Save and you see all of their bakery goods, the cookies, the muffins, the cakes, that was an absolute no. I would not eat anything like that. If somebody had something homemade, like once in a while, I would be like, okay, it's okay once in a while, everything in moderation. But I really pregnancy for me, I had such good pregnancies both times, and I feel like I'm so lucky that I did. But that's when diet matters so much and nutrition matters so much because you have a reason to have a healthy body. You are not only feeding yourself, but you are building your baby's body with your nutrition. So it's so important to eat healthy. And beyond the 100 grams of protein and cutting out sugar, I also cut out caffeine, but I was never a coffee drinker anyway, so that wasn't too hard for me. I also started taking a prenatal vitamin. I took the Thorn brand, and I'll also have an Amazon link if you want to see any of the products that I took, so like the prenatal and other things that I'm going to mention later on. But when you're looking for a good prenatal vitamin, my midwife told me that you want to find vitamins with folate, not folic acid. And so that's the Thorn brand had the folate, not folic acid. I don't know all the science behind it, but that's what worked for me. And I felt really good taking it. Another supplement I took was cod liver oil. That's supposed to be really good for building baby. And I also added magnesium to my water. So that's kind of it for the supplements that I was taking, trying to get in my magnesium, my protein, and cod liver oil, and my prenatal vitamin. Also, I would drink 80 ounces of water every day. I was really bad at drinking water. So I really had to force myself, and I would track it every time I would finish a water bottle, or I had that big like Brewmate 40-ounce water bottle. So my goal was to finish 2 of those. Hydration is so important as well. So staying hydrated, 80 ounces. And something I would also eat daily were dates. I would have about 4 to 6 dates a day. I just like dates. If you look up, right, like pregnancy induction hack, how to induce labor naturally, or dates is one of those superfoods that is supposed to help with labor. And I feel like it definitely did. But also, I just like dates. So I was going to eat them regardless. So I had 4 to 6 dates every day. And starting at 20 weeks, I was drinking Nora tea. So with my first pregnancy, I heard of red raspberry leaf tea, and I was drinking that religiously in that third trimester. But for my second pregnancy, my midwife told me about Nora tea. And so Nora tea is a mix of nettle, oat straw, red raspberry, and alfalfa. I think that's how you say that. And all of those herbs together, you can look up the benefits of them, but it's supposed to help prevent postpartum hemorrhage. It's supposed to help just with your iron levels, which is right going to help prevent postpartum hemorrhage. Those herbs are just good for your overall system, and they even recommend to continue taking it after birth. So that is something I was taking starting at 20 weeks. I would have just 1 cup a day, and then 35 weeks plus in my pregnancy, I started taking 2 cups a day, just drinking it a little bit more often. But oh, another thing is probiotic foods. So I was really anxious about being GBS positive because in the hospital setting it's no big deal. You get antibiotics. In the home birth setting, you can also get antibiotics, but that was not something I wanted to be on. My first labor was really quick, and so if my second labor was that quick and I was GBS positive, and if I chose to take antibiotics, I'd have to get like 2 doses, I think 4 hours before baby is even born. And his whole entire labor was only 5 hours. So that wouldn't have even worked time wise for me to get the antibiotics. But luckily, I was GBS negative, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I feel like it's because of all the probiotic foods I was taking. So, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, anything fermented, that's supposed to be really good probiotic foods. And if we're going to look at just like I'm going to break down my daily sample meal plan of what I would eat in a day. So, breakfast, I would have 2 to 3 eggs with a glass of milk. That together is 20 grams of protein, a side of toast and butter or peanut butter, and then also yogurt. So, it is kind of a big breakfast, but it's so important to nourish your body and eat a lot in pregnancy. Not a lot of junk, but a lot of good, nourishing foods to give you the support you need. Pregnancy is a time of tiredness, and you need energy to go on your life and to live and to feed and nourish your baby. So that would be my breakfast. Lunch, I would have leftovers. So I'll just talk about what dinner is because dinner is what I would have for lunch. So for dinner, every meal we would have a protein, typically chicken or beef. Sometimes we would have fish. And then we would have a carb. So that could either be a potato or rice or pasta. And then we would have a side of a veggie. So that could be like steamed broccoli, steamed carrots, or a salad. And so a sample meal would be like a burrito bowl. We would have chicken with rice and then a guacamole, a bunch of vegetables in there. Or we could have a stir fry, so beef and rice, and again, a bunch of vegetables. Or spaghetti and meatballs with a side salad. And then lunch would be that kind of copycat dinner, the leftovers. And then snacks is where the protein intake really mattered so much. Just with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all of those meals, I would shoot for 20 to 30 grams at each meal. And so I needed some snacks in between to get to that 100 grams. Some of my favorite snacks were just having yogurt, Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, not with any of the added sugars or flavors. Plain is best. And I would kind of make it into like this sundae, like a yogurt sundae. So I would add peanut butter, honey, like pumpkin seeds. If I made my own granola, I would sprinkle that on top, blueberries. Sometimes I would add chocolate protein powder and mix that in just for some extra protein. But that was my favorite go to snack. Also, beef sticks, anything to get extra protein in. And anytime I did have a snack, I would always make sure it was protein. It wouldn't be just this empty snack. It would always be a protein, nutritious snack. So apples and peanut butter, not just an apple. But okay, I think I covered a lot for nutrition. The other way that I was preparing my body for an unmedicated birth physically was being active. So my goal was always to work out 5 times a week. Sometimes I worked out 7 days a week. Sometimes I only worked out 3 days a week, but that was my goal. My goal was 5 days a week. And this started throughout my entire pregnancy. It wasn't difficult in the beginning because I was already doing that pre pregnancy. But I just really made an effort to continue it throughout. And I would say I continued it up until 35 weeks. At 35 weeks, I'll share a different routine that I did for staying active. The majority of the pregnancy, I would do a mix between Pilates and I would just look up YouTube videos. I'm not a fitness trainer by any means. I would just look up videos and like some of my favorites were pregnancy and postpartum TV. Bridget Tyler has a fitness workout, and I actually bought her Built to Birth work course. She has a great fitness program in there, prenatal and postnatal. I would also watch Move with Nicole, Lily Sabri. Those were some of my favorites that I would look for Pilates. And then I would also do strength training, but don't go crazy on me. My strength training was maximum of 12 pounds because that's all I have at home. So 12 pounds for squats, deadlifts, bicep curls. Again, I am not a fitness expert. I just look up workout routines and I would look up pregnancy safe routines. But really, listen to your body and always talk to your provider too. My midwife just said, continue doing what you're doing because it was working for me. And then I would try to run as much as possible. So I also live in Wisconsin. So, weather permitting, I would run as much as I could. But once it started getting into the winter months, I was not running anymore. So, I was just doing the Pilates or just body weight exercises or using dumbbells. I would also really try to continue to do core workouts. Again, I'm not a fitness expert, but I still did core workouts. I just looked up pregnancy safe core workouts. And then I would do pelvic floor strengthening practice as well. And I would try to do that like on off days. So if I worked out for 5 days, these would be my off day routines. And then starting at about 20 weeks, I blew up the birth ball and I was doing some hip circles and pelvic tilts on the birth ball. The birth ball was honestly my best friend in pregnancy. And I cried when we took it down postpartum because it's just such a comfort. I don't know. I love the birth ball so much. I could definitely do these stretches without a birth ball, but there's something about it that just brings me comfort and joy. So I loved the birth ball, hip circles, pelvic tilts, lunges. It's just a fun way to mix up the workouts. And okay, now getting into my 35 weeks plus routine. So this is about the month before giving birth. I really started focusing on just prepping my body with stretching and pelvic floor release. So I would look up pregnancy safe stretches and yoga and pelvic floor release. I would still use the birth ball, but my big workout where I was being the most active was doing what I call contraction practice. So contractions come in waves. They last for about a minute, and then you have in the beginning, you have a long break in between contractions, but as they get closer and closer together, and as you're in transition and getting closer to birthing your baby, they get really close together. And so you only have about a minute or less in between each contraction. So for my contraction practice, I would do a squat hold or squat pulse. So I'm in a squat and just like lightly pulsing up and down. Or I would do a wall sit for 1 minute with a 30-second rest. And I would do 1 minute on, 30 seconds off. 1 minute on, 30 seconds off. And I would do that for 10 or 15 minutes. And this is what helped me perfect my breathing technique going through real contractions. Because when you are holding a wall sit or you are holding a squat hold, that is tough. That it can be painful and hard. So that is where I would practice breathing in, relaxing my breath, trying to relax my body, breathing in. For whatever reason, I did 8 seconds in and 12 seconds out. And I think I explained this in my birth story video, but that wasn't like full 8 seconds. That would be a very long time. But I just counted fast. I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in, and then out for 12 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just however at whatever tempo. I counted at a fast tempo. But I practice so many different breathing techniques. I practice breathing in slowly, like 1, 3. And so I practice at a slow tempo. For me, I liked the fast tempo. So that's what I did. But also, again, I looked up many videos about breathing techniques on YouTube. And that's really where I found what worked for me is just actually putting it to practice. Okay, moving on to how I prepared mentally for an unmedicated birth and for my home birth. First of all, I listened to positive birth stories. And this is my favorite thing. This is why I shared my birth stories on this channel because there's no better way to get excited about birth than listening to other women talk about their positive birth experience. There are many negative birth stories out there and scary, real, scary situations, but hearing the positive birth stories, because so many women have amazing, beautiful, and like truly Holy Spirit filled births. And that's what I would listen to really get pumped and encouraged about my birth. You can actually see, well, another way I prepared was having positive affirmations. And on the wall behind me, I still have from my home birth the positive affirmation on the wall. I never took those down. But so listening to positive pregnancy affirmation and positive birth affirmations, just right speaking truth to what your body can do, what your body was made to do, right? It's so easy to listen to the lies and think, oh, I don't know if I can do it. It's going to be so hard. It's going to be so painful. No, right? It's going to be intense and my body can do it. I can get through it. You can do anything for 1 minute. Speaking all the positivity around your birth and your pregnancy. Another way I prepared mentally was just reading books about birth. And I did attend a birth class at the hospital for my first birth. And I thought it was really helpful just to have an idea of what labor was. So there's 3 stages of labor. And before that, I had no idea. So I personally liked to have this background knowledge of okay, stage 1 is when you dilate, stage 2 is pushing, stage 3 is when your placenta comes out. And just having an idea of what it was going to look like since I had never experienced birth before. Some of my favorite books were Mindful Birthing, Home Birth on Your Own Terms, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and Birthing from Within. And again, those will be in an Amazon link below if you want to check those out. What I really loved about those, oh, and also I did buy the Bridget Tyler Built to Birth work course, and that was great too. I loved that. But what I loved most about all of the reading and the research and the birth courses, it wasn't the physical stages of labor education. It was the breathing techniques and the coping techniques that I learned in those books, which I applied in my when I talked about physically preparing. Another thing I would do to prepare mentally was meditation. So I would meditate between 5 and 15 minutes, probably once a week. I was not very good good at doing this and it's very hard for me to sit still. So 5 minutes was probably the average time I meditated for, but really I was just practicing my breathing while I was doing the meditation and just trying to be comfortable being uncomfortable because that's what being in labor is. You're going to be uncomfortable and it's just surrendering to that. So I tried my best to just sit there, breathe, and be okay with being uncomfortable, being okay with the back pain, with the hip pain, just breathing through it and surrendering to it and letting it be. And honestly, the nice thing about contractions are that they only last for a minute. So you don't have to sit through 15 minutes of being uncomfortable. It's just a minute of uncomfortableness, and then you get a little break to get ready for the next one. All right, another way that I prepared mentally was actually doing birth art. And this was an idea I got from the Birthing from Within book. I am not an artist by any means, and this is something I never thought would help me or that I would be into because I'm just not creative. But I tried birth art. I drew some pictures of me being pregnant, like sketched out. I used stick figures because I don't know how else to draw. But I did like stick figures of me being pregnant. I drew my fantasy of birth. I drew myself in birth and I drew my door to birth. And when you do those drawings and do the birth art, the book was talking about how you can really get an idea of your own perceptions and maybe fears going into your birth because you might not realize that you have a fear going into birth, but then after drawing a picture of yourself being in birth, maybe there's something in that picture that will tell you, hey, I'm actually really nervous about X, Y, and Z happening. And your birth art might reveal that. I don't know. To me, it really helped me visualize what I wanted for my home birth. So I thought that was helpful because I pretty much drew this room. You can see my daughter's ball pit back there. That's kind of what my birth pool looked like. So I drew my birth pool, I drew the affirmations on the wall, and I basically drew this room because this is the room where everything happened. And so that was exciting just for me to get into the positive, exciting mindset of visualization and visualizing the birth. All right, the most important way I prepared for an unmedicated birth in the hospital and for my home birth was preparing myself spiritually. And this is definitely the most powerful tool that you can use because you can prepare your body as much as you want, you can prepare your mind as much as you want, but God's plan for your birth trumps it all. So I really, really prayed over my pregnancy. I prayed over my birth. I prayed what I wanted for my birth, but I also always added, Lord, your will be done. Because no matter what I envisioned for my birth, I knew it was going to unfold how God intended it to unfold and that I didn't have control over that. So I really prayed for patience and I prayed for the ability to let my birth be in God's hands and to be okay with whatever happened. If I had to transfer, that I would be okay with that. That I would just allow the birth to flow as it is meant to flow. And to I would pray for my desire of control to go away so that I didn't have to have the control and so that I would be okay with putting my faith in the Lord and letting birth be. But there were, of course, some specific things that I prayed for too that I'm so grateful for were answered. And even if they weren't answered, I'm just so blessed to have had the amazing births that I did. But some of the things that I did specifically pray for that I feel like are just a testimony to God and His glorious grace are having a healthy baby and healthy birth. Yes, I was able to have that. I prayed for a home birth. I was able to have that. Thank the Lord. I prayed to not have any hemorrhaging, which I didn't have, and I'm so thankful for. I did pray for my baby to be born during the day, which he was. He was born in the morning. I prayed for baby to be in an optimal position. I prayed about being GBS negative. I prayed to not be induced. And then I prayed for patience while I was waiting for birth to get started. And just again, praying for that flexibility to allow birth to be what it is without me having the control. Birth plans are definitely birth preferences, not plans to the T, because you just can't plan a birth, but you can prepare. And so I really hope that this video is encouraging to you and helps you prepare for an unmedicated birth if that is in your plan. I know you can do this. And thank you so much for listening. Have a beautiful day. Bye.